last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a pleasure to be here this evening. My name is Don Ecker. I am your host, and tonight we have a very timely, in my opinion, and special broadcast. But before we go to my guest and start the show, I got a few remarks I've got to make. Today is August the 7th. That day, in case you are not aware of it, is National Purple Heart Day. The Purple Heart, if you are not aware, and I can't imagine there would be many that aren't, but there are always a few. If you are not aware of what that is, it is a military decoration which is presented to the men and the women in the armed forces that are wounded in combat by an armed enemy of the United States. Now, I received the Purple Heart for my service in Vietnam, and I had mixed feelings about it, because when you go into the armed forces, believe me, there are, quite honestly, there are some awards that you don't necessarily want to qualify for. In my case, it happened on Easter Sunday, April the 2nd, 1972. And as a result of that, for almost 6 months, I was in military hospitals throughout the Pacific and finally back in the United States. The last military hospital I was in, which is rather ironic by what I'm talking about, was at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, because the military tries to get you when you are wounded in combat, they try to get you to the closest hospital as near to your home of record as they can do it. In my case, I was living then, my family, my parents, and everybody were living in central western Pennsylvania. So they ended up dropping me off at Valley Forge, which then was a military hospital, Valley Forge General Hospital. And I have some very mixed and even emotional memories about that. But let me tell you a little bit about what the Purple Heart is, how it became the medal it is today, and how it began. It was during the American Revolutionary War when our commander-in-chief at that point, General George Washington, made an executive decision that there needed to be a military award presented to soldiers that have shown high merit, fidelity, patriotism, and what have you. Now, at that point, there were no military declarations. There was no Medal of Honor. There was no Silver Star. There was no Distinguished Service Cross or Bronze Star. There was nothing. But he designed this award, and there are only records of 3 American soldiers, all enlisted men, that received this award. Now, the medal then kind of went into retirement. And it was not until the very early 1930s that the award was once again brought back to the forefront. Remember, just 12 or 15 years previously, we had been engaged in the First World War in Europe. And we had many American men that were wounded and killed. And these awards were then presented to those men still living and the families of the deceased. Now, up until 1942, this award was reserved strictly for personnel from the United States Army. It was then changed by President Franklin Roosevelt's administration to encompass all military service members, both men and women. And as a result, this award has been continuously in service since then. Now, as kind of a bit of interest on the side, and this is a little bit out of the ballpark, but what the hey. We were then expecting that at some point, the United States military and its allies would have to invade the islands of Japan before they would finally surrender. And it was believed at that point that there could conceivably be as many as 1 million. Now think about that, 1 million American casualties and allies. It was almost unthinkable what would have occurred had we had to invade the Japanese home islands. As a result, the then War Department were cranking out Purple Heart medals by the tens and tens and tens of thousands, even millions. And undoubtedly, my hearts that I received were made during that period of time, the Second World War, before I was even born. So, with that being said, I came back from the United States Army and got out of the military hospitals, was discharged, went home in August of 1972. And upon returning, I joined 2 military service organizations. I joined the Disabled American Veterans for a number of reasons, not the least which was the fact that my grandfather was one of the founding members of the DAV after the First World War. And I joined the Military Order of the Purple Heart, which is a service organization that only veterans wounded in action are permitted to join. In 2004, out here in Los Angeles, I was privileged and honored to be elected for a year as the commander of the Audie Murphy Hollywood chapter of the Military Order of the Purple Heart. Now, here's another name that you should be familiar with. Have you ever heard of Audie Murphy? Do you know who he is? Well, at the beginning of the Second World War, after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and we were thrown into the Holocaust of that war, Audie Murphy was a young, small, skinny kid living in Texas with his mother, no father, and numerous brothers and sisters. And it was Audie Murphy going out there busting his very young tail day in and day out to help feed his mother and siblings. But when the war began, after the Japanese launched their sneak attack, Murphy felt it was his duty to do what practically every other young man in the United States did then, and that was join the armed forces. Well, Murphy first went to the United States Marine Corps. They took a look at Audie Murphy, and they told him to go home. He was too small, too slight, too skinny. Well, not to be dissuaded by that, Murphy then promptly marched down to the United States Army and tried to enlist in the airborne, the paratroops. They took a look at Murphy and they said, "Nah, son, you're just too small. You wouldn't hack it." And they sent him home. He ended up becoming a rifle-bearing grunt. His first organization he went into was the 36th Division, Texas Division. And Murphy was a private E1. Well, this kid turned out to be a tiger that no one ever would have believed. He might have weighed 125 pounds soaking wet when he went in, but he immediately began distinguishing himself as being an absolute terror in combat. The Germans soon came to fear him. It was not long before he was promoted to a non-commissioned officer. After the Normandy invasion, he was in Germany. And in one of his most famous actions, they were being attacked. His unit was being attacked by a German armored and infantry outfit. They had a tank, the Americans had a tank destroyer there that was hit and caught on fire. Well, Murphy, seeing the oncoming Germans who had been running an RTO, a radio transmitter, directing artillery fire on the German tanks, jumped up on that burning tank destroyer and started mowing down an entire company of German troops with a .50 caliber machine gun. And he was wounded, shot in the hip. Well, after that action was over, he, of course, ended up in the hospital. He received a battlefield commission. And when he finally left the United States Army and then the Army Reserves, he had gone from private E1 to a major. Audie Murphy was the most highly decorated soldier in the American Armed Forces during the Second World War, winning every decoration, including the Purple Heart, imaginable, from Silver Stars to Distinguished Service Crosses to the Medal of Honor, the highest award any American service member can ever receive. Well, when he came back to the States, he was one of the founding members of the chapter of the Military Order of the Purple Heart that I had the privilege and the honor of leading for a year. So, just as an aside for you all, if you were not aware of that, well, by golly, now you are. Now, on to tonight's show, which has a distinctive military flavor. I am honored to introduce tonight my guest, Mr. James Penniston, who was a senior non-commissioned officer at Rendlesham during that infamous, you pick which one you wanna run with, but I had never heard about the Rendlesham case until the latter 1980s. As it turned out, CNN ran a special series of news reports on this happening that took place in Bentwaters RAF, in Bentwaters Rendlesham Forest, during the Christmas season of 1980. And later, I was to hear more about it when I first met, back in the day, John Lear, who had been turned on to this story by some people he had flown with in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War. Well, Jim very graciously sent me a copy of his brand new book, which you can now get, called The Rendlesham Enigma, Book 1, The Timeline. And with that being said, Jim, it is a distinct pleasure having you here. Welcome to Dark Matters Radio.
Well, thank you very much, Don. And also, thank you for your service. I really appreciate that.
Oh, well, you bet. And thanks for yours, Jim. Okay, Bentwaters. Boy, there is so much information and, I might add, disinformation about this case. And boy, I guess tonight is a heck of a time to get some of that cleared up. Now, in full disclosure, Jim, in the past several years, at one point, I interviewed John Burroughs, and a lot of what we talked about concerned his going through hell and high water about his medical conditions, which he attributed to his encounters there at Rendlesham. And before that, and this is something else that I'm going to I guess you could say, put you on the spot. I've had Larry Warren on. Now, I got to tell you, back in the very late 80s, very, very early 90s, my wife and I were the publishers of UFO magazine. And at that time, I first met Peter Robbins and Larry Warren. Now, I started broadcasting, Jim, back in 1991. And it was around 92, 93, I did several interviews with Warren and Peter Robbins, talking, of course, about the Bentwaters case. Now, I got to tell you, I probably was somewhat remiss, considering my background as a medically retired criminal investigator. I kind of accepted a lot of what Warren had to say at face value. I had no reason at that point to doubt his word. And if I'm to be completely transparent tonight, probably 12, 15 years ago, my wife, Vicki, and I, because of our magazine, UFO magazine, we're going over to Laughlin, Nevada, to attend a UFO event. And lo and behold, who did I run into but Larry Warren? And Larry came up to me and he asked me, he said, Don, I got a favor to ask you. And I said, well, I hadn't seen him in quite a while. And I said, what's that, Larry? He said, my girlfriend is here and she's British. and we're getting married. Would you stand for me? Would you be my best man? And I got to tell you, at the time, I was very honored, and I said I'd be happy to. And my wife stood for his girlfriend, Sue, and they got married. Now, later, of course, I was sorry to hear that marriage fell apart, but then it was a lot of, well, what shall we say, hate and discontent surrounding his alleged involvement, I guess, at Rendlesham. So why don't we start at the very beginning? You were at RAF Bentwaters. You're a senior NCO. Were you on duty when this event of a purported flying saucer first happened?
I was on duty on the 25th and 26th of December 1980. I was the flight chief at RAF Woodbridge. Briefly, the bases are separated, RAF Bentwaters and Woodbridge, by 3 miles. The main operating base is Bentwaters. That means that's where all the control centers are, the headquarters and that. So in Woodbridge was pretty much all they had was the 67th AIRS there. That was the aircrew recovery. It was choppers, and they had a couple squadrons of A-10s. That was about the extent of the resources at Woodbridge. And so I was the flight chief, and I was in charge of security forces for RAF Woodbridge that night.
Now, in full disclosure, because I am sure, Jim, that a lot of people listening to this show tonight probably were either not alive then, or they were so small they would not have had any knowledge of this. But when all of this was happening, we, the United States, and for that matter, the British people, the Great Britain, it was a very precarious time, wasn't it? Yeah.
We had, the threat. It was the Cold War, the height of it. We had the threat of the Soviets at the time, the Warsaw Pact. If that wasn't enough, we had a different type of terrorism. We had groups like Baader-Meinhof, Red Brigade, Black September, the Irish Republican Army, things like that, which are totally different than today's terrorists. And so we had a double threat at the base, but we were the forward operating base for the A-10s. We had 6 squads.
Yeah. Now, I want to go into that a little bit, too, about the A-10s. But something that had happened very shortly before this was the fact that the Soviet Union had invaded Afghanistan.
Correct.
And at that point, Poland, which was a Warsaw Pact member, in other words, a communist Russian client state, were on the verge of a revolution trying to kick the commies out, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of turmoil in Europe at the time, and there were some threats. There was also a real bad scare in November of that year that even changed DEFCONs and that. So, we had some situations that were pretty much at the time, they were normal to us, but, the threat was high.
Yes, it sure was. Now, something else that many people may or may not be aware of. Now, the great threat from the Soviet Union, the Russians, of course, there is today no longer a Soviet Union, but at that point there was the fear, the terror was that the Soviets had a unimaginably huge armored force, tanks.
Correct.
And if they had decided to invade Europe, well, I'm just going to be very blunt. it would have been like shit running through a goose. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what would have stopped the Russians, or what was it that we hoped would have stopped them? Well, several things. Number one, the A-10 Warthog, which was from the bottom of the wheels to the top of the canopy, it was designed to do one thing, and that was kill tanks. And they would kill tanks by their 30 millimeter cannon in the nose, and they could carry all kinds of ordnance. But here was the dirty little secret, ladies and gentlemen. Where Jim Penniston was stationed was chock full of tactical nuclear warheads. And that was one of the great fears, that they could be vulnerable. Correct, Jim?
Yes. Bentwaters did have a storage for tactical nukes. Yes.
Not strategic. There's a big difference. A tactical nuke is a small nuke. A strategic nuke is an ICBM. I just wanted to make that clear. So,
Yes.
Jim, what were you all thinking when this situation first developed?
Well, when it first developed, I arrived at the East Gate. I was called out there and to give an assessment, and it appeared to be a fire in the woods. I'd been to a lot of aircraft crashes up to that point in my career, and it was similar to maybe something on fire in the forest there, Rendlesham Forest. And so that was my first thought, especially it got reinforced with the patrolman that was there, Sergeant Bud Steffens. I said, well, did you see it crash? And he goes, it didn't crash. And I says, it didn't crash? And he says, no. I said, what do you mean? And he says it landed. And I said, huh. So I tried to discount that, because it made no sense. And so I went to the East Gate, and they have a direct line to our communications center for security control in Bentwaters. And I called them direct, and I says, well, it appears to be like an aircraft on fire. And at that time, the control center, when I called them, there's like 5 people on the line. Everybody's doing their job, doing different things. And so I'm talking to the flight lieutenant, and they checked, and they found out that through Eastern Radar, which is MOD and Ministry of Defense, and London Radar, and then Bentwaters Radar, that they lost contact with a bogey about 10 minutes prior. So that was the beginning of the emergency situation for a downed aircraft. And that's when we, asked permission to go off base. The flight lieutenant, and they contacted Colonel Conrad, the base commander, and got approval. And so myself and 2 airmen, that's all we're going to need to set up the entry control point for the first responders. And I had to go off base and plot the entry control point, and for the initial response. And that was what I was doing. I implemented that security response option.
Now, I have a question, Jim. Now, considering the sensitive nature of the base and the sensitive nature of the material stored on the base, not to mention the aircraft, there were all kinds of anti-nuclear demonstrations, fears of terror groups. You mentioned several of them, and they were creating quite a ruckus in Europe. Were you and your men, when you left the base, carrying arms? And the reason I ask, I know how hanky the Brits are about weapons. Now, did that also extend to American forces?
Well, it does in certain situations. If it involved a crashed, aircraft with a nuclear weapon, that would deploy with a lot of weapons. But no, I mean, we had the status of forces agreement there, and the Brits were sensitive to that stuff. I mean, aircraft crash, all I had to do is plot the entry control point, go up and take some pictures, if I could of, I'm supposed to look for survivors. There was not going to be no survivors. All the aircraft crashes I seen, there's nothing to, no
but
survivors.
Your buddy told you that he saw the thing land.
I didn't have no buddies.
Well, I'm talking about the sergeant you first mentioned.
Okay, the Sergeant Steffens.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and you know what? I discounted it because he was law enforcement. He wasn't security.
So, okay. All right.
Yeah, so I just discounted it because he didn't know what he was talking about. Okay. And besides, the trees in that forest are planted by the Forestry Service, and they harvest them like every 10 or 15 years. And they're only planted like 5 to 6 feet apart. I mean, there's no way nothing can land in it. A chopper can't land in it. Definitely not an aircraft. I mean, I was pretty sure there was a crashed aircraft there.
Not even a Harrier jet.
No, it's impossible.
Okay.
It's impossible, and that's why it left the only conclusion that it had to be a downed aircraft. There was stuff that was not familiar with what was going on. I mean, there was over the canopy of the forest, there was a glowing white dome of light. I have never seen nothing like that with an aircraft crash. The colors were, they could be consistent with titanium burning or something like that and fuel. That's the only thing I could think of.
Well, that would have been a heck of a fire, wouldn't it? If an aircraft had gone down there with the fuel, the material on board the craft, there would have been probably a heck of an explosion, a big fire. That would have been a little different, wouldn't it?
Correct. And Sergeant Steffens said that none of that happened. So I was a little perplexed. But I felt better after talking to the control center when they lost an aircraft over, on radar over the RAF Woodbridge. That was enough to actually confirm emergency situations so they can contact the wing command post and then the base commander to get permission to go off base. It was not something they just allowed anybody to do at any time. I mean, there had to be a bona fide emergency to deploy off base under the status of the forces agreement. I mean, and that radar confirmation actually confirmed the emergency situation.
So now you have 2 airmen with you. You guys leave the base. You go over there. And what do you find?
Well, we go to the, I set up an entry control point because my vehicle, I had a CJ5 Jeep. I couldn't go any farther. So I got what I could out of the crash kit. We carried crash kits all the time. We lost a lot of A-10s. So I grabbed, camera. That's, so you can start photographing maybe some, evidence for the ground. And I had my own radio, interbase radio. I had that with me, portable. And Kabanzak, the security airman, he had one too. So I plotted the entry control point, called it in, and we were having radio difficulties. So I left Kabanzak there for the responding forces to go through him. And then myself and Aaron Burrows proceeded to the forest tree line. The things that started changing for me, was the physical effects as I entered the forest. It was static electricity on my clothes and skin and hair. It was also interesting to see that these way the trees are planted are on berms, earthen berms, And so I couldn't see over the berm in front of me in the forest. And believe me, that forest is dark, but there was light coming out from behind that berm.
Did you have a flashlight?
No. I mean, none that I used. I mean, I had one on my belt, but I never used it. There was enough light out there from the craft itself. Where were we at?
Well, you were up to the berm.
Yeah, so as I come up to the berm, there was a big flash of light from behind us. So, we all hit the ground, and I look, and I'm alone. And I look back to the right, after I got up, and Burroughs is about 20 feet to the back right. And I look back at Kabanzak, and he's, where I put him, about 50 yards away. And nobody was moving. They were just standing there still.
Any idea what the flash of light was from?
No, I tell you, it was reaction when I hit the ground. I thought it was an explosion, and so there was no noise at all. So, when I got up, I said, "Oh, that's count my blessings on that one." And as I started moving toward the berm, because I had investigated, the light started dissipating down more. And as I, got closer to it, maybe within 10 feet, 15 feet of the light, I was finding that it was difficult to move. I mean, my movements were labored. I mean, walking up there. I compare it to like walking through a pool of water waist deep, that type of sluggishness.
So there were definitive physical effects that you were feeling.
Correct. And so as I come over the berm, this white light, all I see is white light, and it starts to dissipate down. And as it dissipates down, I start to see a formation of a craft in it, a triangular craft. And the light starts dissipating more and more and more, the white light, and it's only showing at the bottom of the craft. And then I'm looking at the skin of the craft, the fabric of the craft, and I can see all these lights running through the fabric of the craft.
How far would you guess you were from it physically?
8 feet.
Did you begin snapping photographs?
I've been snapping photos prior to going into the forest.
Okay.
Yeah, and the closest I got before I ran out of film, we had film in those days, was probably maybe 15 feet. But so that put the camera away, and as I stood there, I don't know. I knew it was an aircraft crash, so I called in on my radio with hopes that they can, hear me, even though I can't hear them. I call in to terminate the downed aircraft crash SRO, security response option, and I implemented a helping hand situation. And that is a security situation involving the possible threat to priority A, B, or C resources at the base.
Now, what does that, for those non-military listeners out there, what does that mean?
That means that there is an operational threat to the war-making ability of the base. I mean, our aircraft, weapons and storage, or whatever it might be, command centers, there's a threat.
Did they put the base on alert?
No, they wouldn't do that for a helping hand. Helping hand is a security situation of it's a possible hostile threat. We don't know yet, and but it does get up-channeled telephonically from the control centers, and it did go up. We find out, as in the Rendlesham Forest, or as in the Rendlesham Enigma book, we found out after publishing that the alert message did go up. The helping hand to air staff at the Pentagon, and what do we do is we got 30 minutes to figure this out, to figure out what, if it's hostile or operated.
Now, at this point, you had no conception of what this object might have been, correct?
Well, no. It was a triangular type craft of some sort with a large dorsal fin coming out of the back, which would be like the back of our aircraft, sort of.
Which would suggest designed for travel within an atmosphere, correct?
Well, no, yeah. So, and as the, let me get to the craft finally, and just the coloring on the fabric and all that's dissipated. And all I have is a black craft in front of me, triangular, and some white light coming out the bottom. Like I said, my camera was spent on film, so I started taking as many notes as I could. I wasn't even sure if I was going to survive the encounter. And and then the other thing is I'm unarmed, which was not a good situation. I don't even think that wouldn't have helped, being armed. I mean,
no, but it might have made you feel better.
It would have made me feel better. You're correct. It's psychological. You're right. And so, so I'm wondering how this can, be a couple feet off of the forest floor, and what's holding it up. So I look underneath it, and there's nothing but light underneath it. But at the bottom where the light is, there's actually indentions in the ground. And that's when I got really concerned. I said, "Oh my God, what kind of technology is that? That can do that? Can hold up this object and make indentions in the ground." It was wintertime. Like it was 32 degrees out, and the ground was frozen, so it took quite a bit of weight to make an 1.5 inch impression. I started doing things that I figured I'd do as much as I could as writing down as many notes as I could. Like I said, I wasn't sure I was going to survive it, because back to my right had Aaron Burroughs, who wasn't moving, just standing emotionless, and the same with going around with Kabanzak. So
Kabanzak had another camera, correct?
No.
Well, who had the second camera?
Nobody.
Oh, I thought you said that Kabanzak had a camera also.
He had a IVR, a radio.
Okay. All right.
He had the Motorola radio. So yeah, he was. Burroughs didn't have a radio. They didn't want him talking on the radio, and he already caused enough havoc, so they didn't want him talking. So with the craft in place, I'm starting to look for things, get as much information I can about it. And I'm looking for obvious things that aircraft have. They have ailerons, they have flaps, they have, crew compartments, landing gear, all kinds of stuff. It was void of everything that makes an airplane fly.
Did this look like an object that might have housed a crew, or at least a pilot?
Well, I pasted off. It was 9 feet on each side, and maybe about 6.5, 7 feet high. It was a little hard to tell with the berm there. I wouldn't know. If it was one person in there, it would have to have been awful cramped. I mean, besides, there wasn't no the craft outer fabric was completely sealed. There wasn't even rivets on it. Let alone a crew compartment opening or a window or something like that.
Were drones available then?
No, that's all stuff that came years later.
So you didn't even think in that light, right?
No. But I never thought the craft was manned. Anyway, I did my walk-arounds of it, and it was. I like to go to what one of the main differences, like with the fabric of the craft. It was black and shiny. It looked almost glass-like, and when you touched it, it was very smooth.
So you did touch it?
Well, the first time I touched it is when I looked underneath it to see the landing gear, and all I seen was light. And I tried to move it at that point in time. Good, I'm glad you brought that up. I tried to move it at that time. Even if you had a car in the woods, or wherever, and you try to move a car, you could push it and get a little movement out of it. This here was completely solid, didn't move at all, which was also perplexing, is because it wasn't being held up in landing gear like I was used to.
So it was hovering?
No, I take it was fixed in the ground because of the indentions by the light.
Okay, gotcha.
The light underneath it actually made indentions in the ground, 3 of them.
So that would suggest that whatever the light was, it was, at least in that configuration, solid.
Yes, some type of technology. Obviously, I didn't understand, and still don't. And which made the situation out there even more complexing, because all those things there were compiling up to say, well, first of all, the Soviets didn't have nothing like that. I mean, but prior to that assignment, I worked at Offutt Air Force Base as part of the SAC Elite Guard, and we were bodyguards for the 36 generals at Omaha, Nebraska, and the underground command post for SAC. And I had been on many security details for research and development briefings that were being done by the generals and stuff. And the technology was nothing they were looking at it often in the future, and those were projected out 50 years. So it was definitely technology that wasn't couldn't be replicated by and be in the James Book of known aircraft or anything like that. I mean, even designed aircraft prototype.
Did you exchange any conversation with either Kabanzak or Burroughs, or did they say anything during this period of time?
No, they were airmen. I did all the talking. That was on the radio. I was talking to the control center. Initially, when we set up the entry control point, I gave instruction to Kabanzak. That was it. And there was no need to talk to them. Besides, right. I thought that they were casualties anyway. They were emotionless. I don't know what was going on.
Well, I know when I was in a precarious situation with guys on my team, even if it was nonverbal, we still communicated with each other.
Well, I tried. I looked back at them. There was no movement. They were just frozen.
Are you suggesting that this object may have had some type of influence on them, Jim?
I know the influence, I would say, is immediately around the craft, because all the things that were physical, like I told you, dissipated, but to a point. But this is all within 15 feet of the craft this stuff happened. I think outside of that let's call it this bubble of influence, outside of that, I think that, no, I don't think they were affected at all. I think actually who was affected was actually what was going on around the craft.
All right, and that was what?
Well, that you have a craft there that we later found out by doing the ground indentions from the team from Langley. They determined it was 8 tons. I mean, that's a pretty light aircraft, but 8 tons. I mean, they should have seen easily an 8-ton craft.
Well, that's 16,000 pounds.
Yeah, but that's pretty light for aircraft. A-10 weighs what, 25? So. Okay,
so now let's move along. So you're studying this thing.
Yes.
And you're walking around. You're taking notes. Now, at one point, is it not correct that you saw some type of indentations on it, writing or something in a very odd script?
Right. I came back around. I was doing a 360. That's how it started. And when I came around to one side of it, I seen an inscription written on it. And I felt sort of relieved. I was hoping that it would say, U.S. Air Force prototype, Russian sickle on it. Who knows? Something. NASA, anything like that. But it wasn't. It was, like I said, the craft fabric of the skin of the craft was smooth as glass. But these glyphs, I'll call them, that were there felt like sandpaper when I touched them. So I used the word etch for the.
So you copied those down to the best of your ability, correct?
I did. I copied them. I walked back around. I was going to do another 360, and I was just too fascinated by the glyphs, so I went back around to concentrate on those. And
okay, now, so far there's only you and Burroughs and Kabanzik. When did?
Well, no. I mean, we're under observation at East Gate. We later find out, East Gate Sergeant Chandler, the flight chief from Bentwaters, is at the East Gate. He's observing everything.
So he can see you.
He can see
from his position.
That's what he told me when I talked to him the morning afterwards, and so that opened it up for several people to see what was going on.
Did you ever check that line of sight?
Oh, it was clear because I did. Because, like I said, the Forestry Service would cut down forests. And they had at the time, compared to the way it looks now, the trees are all growing up. But they're, not unless they cut them recently. But at that time, there was about 250 to 300 yards of open field that had been cut. So there was direct line sight to the landing area.
Okay, now later on, other Air Force personnel did go out there, including Colonel Halt. Now,
no.
No, well, I was just going to ask you, was it this evening or following? Because
okay. The first people who went on is after our first debrief was the security police. That was Captain Verano and Major Drury from the Security Police Squadron. They went out there. Sergeant Gullius. They were out there the following morning.
Did you observe this thing take off?
I sure did. Yeah, I sure did. And like I said, keep this in mind now. When it took off, I got back on the ground in a prone position. And it moved back to these trees. Now, these trees, like I said before, are planted maybe 5-6 feet apart. And I paced this off, and it's 9 feet. So it cannot go through those trees, but it did. It moved on back, maybe 20 feet, and then it moved up to the canopy of the forest, made a slight right turn, and was gone in a blink of an eye. So
that had to tell you something.
Yeah, I was relieved.
No, I mean, it had to tell you that whatever this thing is, it's highly unlikely the power plant was made in Detroit.
Oh, I knew that this was not something that the current Air Forces had. When I touched the main glyph above the other 5 glyphs, I knew that this technology was amazing. And since you're ex-military, I'll go over that a little bit with you. There was this triangle, a large triangle with a circle around it and 3 other little circles. And then the other glyphs are below it, and they measured about 4 or 5 feet. But the one above with this main triangle got my attention. And so I was going to touch it just like the rest of them. But when I touched that, I got a blinding white light. I mean, it was I couldn't see nothing but white light. And in that, I could see nothing but ones and zeros. I don't know how long I had my hand on the triangle, but maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 seconds, I don't know. And I got my wits with me. I gained my senses, and I just lifted my hand off, and the light was gone. Everything was back to normal. And here's the clincher. It wasn't light as I know it, because I had my full night vision at that point. So it couldn't have been light.
So it was apparently a mental thing.
it definitely wasn't light. I would think it'd be more of a mental too, or some type of communication that I can't understand. I still don't understand it. But I know it wasn't light, even though I used the term light. It's because I don't know what it was. It was similar to light. But like I said, I had my full night vision. Your night visions, that'd be gone for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that, after a light like that was in front of you. And that forest and the forest is black. I mean, that's how dark it is. Those trees are not far apart. And the only area that was lit is right around the craft, and that's because they had a light underneath it. They had light coming out from underneath it.
Oh, just as an aside, Jim, we're under a minute before we must go to break. Believe it or not, we've already eaten up 1 hour, my friend.
No.
True story.
Oh, no.
I wouldn't kid you about that.
Okay.
Excuse me, when I get into a story like this, I inadvertently, Jim, I go to my cop, questioning routine. Sometimes I don't even realize I do it, but it's just a matter of damn near second nature. And I'll tell you what, let's break now, pick up when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, my very special guest, Mr. James Penniston, the book, The Rendlesham Enigma. One of the strangest cases, quite honestly, in the last 40 years, because this took place 40 years ago. My God, that kind of scares me just thinking about it. Hey, we'll be back with a whole lot more. All of this, every scintilla, is being brought to you courtesy of KGRA Radio, your contact point to those strange, shadowy places. We'll be back.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. After just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 945-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. That's 945-882-7221. Or go to the website angioprim.com.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied. But you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with, you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Permanent industrial glue impossible to remove? Not anymore, because Handyman Formula by D-Bond is a patented chemical adhesive remover. It's used in the building and home maintenance industry, but now it's available for your home use, for your DIY projects. Unglue stickers, silicone rubber, labels, price tags, flex tape, weather stripping, carpet glue, wood glue, liquid nails, even 3M 5200. And It dissolves graffiti. Yeah, graffiti. Handyman Formula by D-Bond works, and it's safe to use on most surfaces. No need to call a professional. Don't get out the pliers and blowtorch. Just apply a little Handyman Formula by D-Bond and wait 90 seconds, then quickly and easily pull the items apart. Get unstuck. Visit dbondhandymanformula.com. That's dbondhandymanformula.com or call 561-575-4200. Handyman Formula by D-Bond.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are back with my guest, Mr. James Penniston. This is our number 2. Let me tell you what, this is an absolutely riveting story. There is so much involved in this case. And I can tell you, back in the very early 90s, after I began my first radio program, when I was broadcasting on CRN, I can recall butting heads with a number of nationally known skeptics, including the infamous Philip J. Klass. Now, Jim, were you aware of Phil Klass?
Never heard of him.
Oh,
I haven't. I'm sorry, I'm not a ufology person.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay.
Klass had been a former senior editor with AvWeek and Space Technology, was a virulent anti-UFO skeptic, and he would jump up and down claiming all of this nonsense was a result of the lighthouse there. Now, obviously, he never spoke to you. But what do you say now, just as an aside, what do you say to people that try to tell you it was the lighthouse? Or has anybody ever tried to tell you that?
Not to my face, they haven't, but no, I mean, that's part of a cover story that they're using, the MOD uses useful idiots. And they used one there, and that was how that came about. I mean, the lighthouse, everybody knew where that was. It sat over on the coast. You could see it's a very dim light that pulsated every 4 or 5 seconds or something. But that was so far away. When they bring up anything with lighthouse, I know they're not serious about what happened at Bentwaters.
Okay, now I've got a couple of questions here.
Sure.
Right off the bat.
You can ask them all any question you want, Don. I'm ready.
Oh, great.
I hope I know them.
Oh, yeah.
I hope I do.
This is coming from the chat lounge. This is from a real close friend of mine, Stephen, who, as a matter of fact, last week, before I had to cancel, we were originally scheduled to interview Jim last Friday. Stephen got these questions to me, a day or two before we were supposed to go on the show. I couldn't do the show, so Bill contacted Jim. He graciously agreed to come back this week. So I told Stephen, I said, look, buddy, don't forget to remind me about this. Well, today, by God, he did. So here we go. Okay, Jim, in the early tellings of the Rendlesham case, you said you brought a camera with you and you photographed the object. With that thought in mind, why would you then feel to be compelled to sketch the craft in real time without knowing that it posed a threat. Remember, this was an incursion by an unknown object. It has always seemed unreasonable to me to find that someone operating under such a stressful circumstance would passively sketch an unknown craft, especially after you already photographed it. I can't imagine a crime scene photographer sketching the crime scene after he took photos of it. So how do you answer that?
The photos, I ran out of film before I got over the first berm. I got pictures of the craft, I would say, maybe one, maybe two. That's what I thought at the time. Later, I find out that's not the case. But were you able to photograph the glyphs? No, I had no film. I was out of film. The camera is only had one, I think maybe one roll of film in it. I used it and I ran out of film, and so maybe at the best I had one or two pictures at the time, I thought. And the other thing is, I implemented the security situation. I don't know. He hasn't read the Rendlesham Enigma book, apparently. So I did initiate that, like I said earlier, and it was a security situation. And I didn't think I was going to survive it because what was in front of me was completely unknown and foreign to me. And due to the situation with, the other airmen, it had a whole range of emotions. And, the more time I had with it, the calmer I got. Did you ever see the photographs you took, or were they sequestered away? They were turned into base photo lab, to be processed. And when to get them picked up, they were all whited out. At first, I thought it was some kind of conspiracy thing, didn't want to. But then I find out that Monroe Nevels, who did the investigation of the first night the following day, per Colonel Conrad's orders, took pictures out there too. And he didn't have his develop at the photo lab. He has a hobby of doing his own, at home. And he published, tried to, development at home. And all of his were whited out too, but I didn't find that out till like 10 years later. Now, wait a minute. Now, that would suggest to me, I know just enough to be a danger to myself. Right. Okay? That would suggest radioactivity. Yes, and that was confirmed. So, what was the first part of Steve's question? Okay, if you had taken photographs and then you kind of walked around sketching this thing, he found it unusual that in such a stressful situation, after you've already photographed the object, that you would then take the time, not knowing if this thing was a threat or not, to sketch it out. Yeah, and the other thing I'm waiting for is I'm assuming I'm going to have other responding forces coming. That never happened. So I thought. So that first night, you were not joined in the forest by other personnel. No, because everybody's seen the takeoff. They've seen it from different points of base. They've seen it from Bentwater's base. They've seen it from where they've seen the takeoff. So that's what we found out later on. Everybody has a different vantage point. Like I never seen the landing, and the security patrols at Bentwater, 3 miles away, seen the landing, and and apparently so did Sergeant Steffings. Excuse me. Okay, now let me jump to this second question. Let's get this. Did I answer Steve's question? I don't know if I answered. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in light of the fact that none of the photographs came out. Question number 2. Okay, Jim, what's your bottom line on Larry Warren? He says he was there. Burroughs and others said he wasn't there. Where do you come down on Warren?
Okay. First of all, anybody that was involved with the incident, directly involved, it was remained top secret until 1993. Okay. I got to be careful because I don't want to give out personal information. But I can tell you this with certainty, and I do explain it in the book. Pretty much after Warren got there, he was pretty much being slated for discharge. He didn't know it, but he was, for various reasons I cannot go into it. And so he never, got a weapons card. He never worked security flights, nothing like that.
They would not allow him to handle a weapon.
No. And what they did is they put him, we called them weed and seed jobs, they had him be the gopher and security police supply and run errands, stuff like that. That's
bring
the kind
in
of
the
stuff.
coffee, empty the ashtrays.
Yeah. Give me another cup of coffee. And he finally got discharged, I think, like 4 or 5 months later. I think from the service. He wasn't in very long. He was only in like 6 months total time. But he is definitely wasn't working that night, according to Adrian Bustenza, his only witness he had that said that. So he wasn't involved. He hoaxed both his involvement in Left at Eastgate book. But he went left at Eastgate. The interesting thing is about Warren is what he tells in that book is actually the cover story that was put out. So you can assume this, you can put it together that he took the cover story and made it his.
Well, I can tell you from my own personal interaction with Larry Warren, and this was back in the 90s. He told me that now he didn't specify the first night in the forest, all right? He didn't specify that. But he did specify that he was in the forest at some point and he saw the craft. And after he came back, there were unknown personnel there in civilian clothes that he told me he surmised came from the Pentagon. They were all taken downstairs in some room somewhere at the base and underwent interrogation, and he indicated that he thought he had been drugged.
All of us were interviewed that were directly involved, okay, on the first night. And then the cover story was to cover up the first night, to meld it into the third night, which just happened by chance. And by the way, the third night, there was no craft on the ground or nothing like that. There were lights in the sky. So there's a totally different thing about it. This is why Monroe Neville's testimony is so key from disaster preparedness. He was sent out there the following morning after we got in by Colonel Conrad, the base commander, to investigate the first night landing and takeoff area. And that's where, the radiation, the beta radiation was 100 times normal levels, right at where the craft was, where the landing area was. And by the way, finding out later, the radiation and heavy, that's why that craft felt warm to touch, is because it wasn't because it had been traveling through the air or something. It's because it was hot, radioactive.
Did you or any of the others, now I'm not talking about John Burroughs, but did you suffer any ill effects?
No, I had a little balance issue, maybe a week or two afterwards, or 3, but that was the extent of it. No one else. I'll tell you what, if there was anybody going to be, if affected by physically or medically by the craft, it would have been me. I actually had contact with it.
What do you think happened to John Burroughs?
I don't know what happened to him. When we were in Halt's office 2 days later, he talked about everything, the triangular craft, the whole thing. That's confirmed by Halt. And now he can't remember, anything but lights. So I don't know what's going on there. I have a theory on it, if that's what you want.
Sure.
My theory is, I think that once I entered that area of influence, the bubble that I talked about, I think that the effects that I was feeling was because of distortion of whatever it was, interdimensional type stuff or time or something. And I go back to time because that is an interdimensional phenomena. And I think what happened is, I think for the people outside that bubble, I think everything went instantaneous for them. I don't think there was nothing, no 45 minutes of the craft on the ground or anything like that. And the reason I use the word 45 minutes, that amount of time, is because I had an electric watch at the time, and my watch was off 45 minutes. It was 45 minutes slow when I got to CSC, Central Security Control. And so I figured whatever that electrical field or whatever it was that was causing those effects stopped my watch for that 45 minutes.
That's very interesting. That shows a definite, would appear to show a definite physical effect. Now,
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, back in the early days of this case, when it became public, all right, after the CNN series with, the reporter's name escapes me now, Carol.
Oh yeah. That's a horrible piece of work, wasn't it?
Well,
maybe you might not want to remember the guy's name.
It basically, it did open the door on this.
Yeah, but that wasn't the intent. They wanted it to go away. There wasn't. They otherwise, why would they classify it top secret?
Well, what I was going to ask you, actually, I had a couple of questions.
Sure. Go ahead.
I'm
getting excited, Don. Come on.
Yeah, I can tell. I do not ever recall, because I watched everything that came on the tube at that time where Bentwaters was being discussed. Mm-hmm. And I never recall you, or anybody else for that matter, talking about the effect that you just described a short while ago, with the flash in your head of light, and then what appears to be what I would have to call a computer code being sent to your mind. Now, you never talked about that then. When did you first go public with that?
2010. And it was by accident. I mean, it was by chance. I tell you what happened is we were doing a film shoot down in Phoenix in 2010. It was with John Burroughs, Linda Moulton Howe. And in the middle of that's when they had filmed too. In the middle of the film shoot, they were changing the film, and Burroughs asked me about a date or time. And because I had my notebook, I was, for the glyphs and that. And I had went back too far in the notebook, and the glyphs or the ones and zeros that I wrote down after I got home, and when I couldn't sleep in that, I thought I was having a mental breakdown. And I felt compelled to write them down. I wrote them down, and after I got done writing them down, I felt normal again, which means I dodged a bullet because I couldn't go to the base hospital, and I couldn't tell them I was seeing ones and zeros. You can imagine this is all going to end, wasn't going to end well. So we're at the film shoot, and when I'm flipping back, Burroughs sees the ones and zeros, and so does Howe. And it was at that time when Howe says, well, where is that? And I said, well, I might as well tell him, that this is when I lost my, the trauma of it, and I thought I was losing my mind. And Linda said, well, that's ones and zeros. Or no, she says, that's binary code. And I said, binary code? That's when I found out what binary code was. And the funny thing about that is I'd done a book with Linda back in 96 or 95. And I let her use, I think it was maybe a page of my transcript from my hypnosis I had in 94. And in there, I talk about receiving binary code. And so I didn't realize what all that meant until that point in time in 2010. And when that happened, Linda was on me about getting it deciphered. I mean, I was really being badgered by her, Burroughs, the production company. It was just terrible. And I said, I'll go home and think about it. And so I went back, and I get a call from Kim Sharon, the producer for Ancient Aliens. And she says, we'd like to see if it means anything, this binary. And I said, oh, it's not going to mean nothing, because I know how it happened. It happened during, following the incident, and I couldn't sleep, and I was losing my mind, and all this other stuff. And I said, okay. So I let her, I scanned her 5 pages, sent it off to her, and she had her expert look at it. And then in the meantime, I'm getting badgered every day by Linda. I mean, 2 or 3 calls a day by her and Burroughs to let them look at this ones and zeros, this binary. And so I get a call from Sharon, and she says, okay. She brings it up in the computer, and we're going through it, and at time, and she says, this means something. I said, you are kidding me. She goes, and I didn't say that, but I can't say it on the radio, what I said to her. And she says, no, and that's when I found out about the binary message. So not taking her word for it, Linda, or Kim Sharon's, I said, okay. So I get a hold of Linda, and I sent her the same 5 copies. I says, go ahead and decipher them. And she sends them off to 5 different people, like in Australia, North Carolina, Colorado, and to be deciphered. And she calls me up like 3 days later. She is excited, giddy, and she says, there's a message in there. I said, okay. I said, what is it? And she reads it off verbatim, what happened with Kim Sharon and her person that deciphered it.
What was the message?
Oh, that's in the Rendlesham Enigma book. And
but the audience that are listening to this, Jim.
Yes, it tells 7, the most important part is 7 locations. It's actually 6 locations, but the first and the last one, the first one's repeated twice at the beginning and end of locations around the world. And they're from Sedona, Arizona, off of Belize, off of Peru, Greece, Egypt, China, and then also an area off of southwest of Ireland, which is near the mythical island, according to Ancient Aliens, of High Brazil. And
this message would seem to indicate it's pre-diluvial?
Well, it's the message itself, our coordinates is, yes, around the world. However, it wasn't discovered till years later, even after that, about 4 or 5 years later, that within this code, there's a code within the code. And that was done by the Rendlesham Forest research team. And this has put out different information, probably the most spectacular, which only came out last year, a couple of months prior to the book. Matter of fact, they held the book up for it, that the code contained a fine structured constant. This is something that is within everything digitally, as far as a tenth over, 1/100th over. it goes, the way we operate as humans today in our knowledge level, we operate about 6 digits over, okay? Carl Sagan back in 77 or 76 or something like that said that if they ever got a message from a higher intelligence, it would have to be 7 digits or 8 digits over. And they would be really, really smart people. And the Rendlesham Forest code itself goes over 13 digits. So whoever this intelligence is far beyond our capabilities.
Well,
today.
I had the indication you felt that this object, this craft, was time traveling. Would that be correct?
Yes, I've always had that feeling, that impression. Yes.
Okay, now we've got
that's interdimensional, by the way. Hollywood term is time travel. It's interdimensional travel is time travel.
Okay, we've got a little less than 1 minute before the break. Now, let me read this question to you I just got.
Okay.
And you can think about it during the break and then pick up when we get back. Now, you said something just a minute or two ago that actually plays right into this. Now, this is from our chat room user Neutron. And Neutron says, well, missing time, that might mean abduction, possibly. Have you gone through hypnotic regression concerning the 45 minutes of missing time? Now, hold your thought on that, Jim. And because you had just mentioned with Linda how you underwent regression, we'll find out what that's all about when we come back.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dark Matters Radio. My guest tonight, Mr. James Penniston, his book, The Rendlesham Enigma. Book 1, The Timeline, which suggests there are going to be more books. And we'll pick up and find out exactly what's happening when we get back. Stick around.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. GetTheTea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com. The tea that makes you go.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard. Available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
The Liberator Rocket Heater will heat your home for free. The highly efficient Liberator Rocket Heater has no moving parts. It's safe and strong, constructed of 1/4-inch steel. So like all things made in the USA, it's built to last. Uses any kind of wood, sticks, even scrap in its gravity-fed firebox. And it heats workshops, homes, garages, outbuildings, industrial areas, and barns. Watch the video of this blast furnace stove in action. Visit RocketHeater.com. That's RocketHeater.com. In 2019, the KGRA is closing down its archive vault to be reopened in another format in the near future. This year, you can get all the 2019 KGRA programming on demand on YouTube, Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, and Google Play. More ways for you to stay connected to your contact for alternative talk radio on the planet. KGRAradio.com.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRAradio.com.
And we are back right here on Dark Matters Radio with our last segment with my special guest tonight, Mr. James Penniston. Jim, before we had to go to break, I read a question to you I received from the chat lounge. Let me go through it one more time just to catch everybody up. And that is, have you ever gone through hypnotic regression concerning the 45 minutes of missing time that you mentioned your watch pointed out? Now, you had said back around 94, 95, you were working with Linda Howe. You said that you did go through hypnotic regression. You didn't say what it was concerning. So why don't you go ahead and lay that out? And then you also had something you wanted to bring up before the show was over.
Okay, in 93, I retired from the Air Force. And that's when we questioned about Bentwaters. It got declassified. They told us we could talk about because nothing happened. Okay. So from 93 to 94, I was in civilian life, and I was having just a terrible time sleeping at night. It got to the point where I was only getting like 2 hours of sleep a night. And I was at that time a vice president of security investigation and security investigation firm. And so I had to be, sharp. And so anyway, I went to my MD, and she says, "There's not much more I can do for you with it." She said, "Other than give you a medication." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to do that." And so she said, "Will you take a referral to a psychiatrist?" I said, "Sure, okay."
Now, so, had you told her about what transpired in the UK?
No way. I never talked about it. No. I mean, the only thing I did is Halt asked me prior to that to go to England to do a documentary because there was a disgruntled airman that had been talking about that he was involved, and he wasn't. So I did that. So anyway, I took the referral, and I had to meet an appointment every week for like a month. And the psychiatrist said, Jim, I think there was something traumatic that happened in your childhood or something like that. And I was thinking, oh no, what? You got to be kidding me. That's what's keeping me from sleeping. She said, I think so. And I'd like to do a regression. And, I was thinking all kinds of bad things, maybe abused or, all kinds of things. And because my memory is a great childhood, okay? And so she set up a time, and we did a transgression. Her notes were on videotape, which she later gave me, by the way. And we did a 2-hour session. I come out of it. I feel great. I feel rested. I feel just the best I had in months. And I'm looking at the psychiatrist, and their jaw's on the table. I said, what's the matter? she says, we're going to have another transgression. She says, and I says, is it bad? She says, we're going to have to talk about Woodbridge. I went, oh, no. Yeah, I was relieved at the same time, knowing it wasn't some kind of child abuse stuff. And the other thing, I was like, Woodbridge, oh, my God. And so we did another one, too. To date, none of them have been given out publicly. I think only maybe 2 minutes have been shown publicly. The transcript, I didn't know it was really, I never listened to the tapes until maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago, a couple of years ago. And that's when we were writing the book. And Gary says, I'm going to have to transcribe it. He says, and you're going to have to listen to me, and so you can know what's in it. I said, okay. So that's how that happened. And believe me, the psychiatrist and the doctor, they were doctors. There's nothing about ufology or that kind of hocus pocus stuff.
Well, did anything come out of that you had forgotten about, or you had suppressed, or?
Well, yeah, there was a 45-minute or 40-minute. Well, I don't know what time frame, but there was a block put in during the debriefings, and for some reason, it kept moving me from the craft after touching the symbol back to the OSI building. And then during the second regression, she actually broke through that, and we have all this on film. And what they were trying to make me forget was the binary.
So somebody in the Air Force chain of command.
No, I don't think I don't think it's Air Force, because I knew all the AFOSI agents, and there's only 8 or 9 of them, and no, they did things like black marketing and counter-terrorism and shit like that. And no, I knew them, but they did bring in 2 people that were in suits, and one had a British accent, and the other had American. And I did agree to, because they said initially they wanted this to go away, and so did I. And they said, we'll make sure everything you said, are saying it's true. I said, okay. How do we do that? And he says, well, we have to give you like something depends on it. Okay. And so I must have agreed to it because I wanted it to go away.
Okay, that brings up another question I wanted to ask, because here we are with an American military base, a United States Air Force base that had tactical nuclear weapons. It had one of the most effective anti-armor weapons around at that time, the A-10, the Warthog. And here was an unknown object, allegedly from an unknown origin, landing in a foreign country, not the United States, right next to a United States base. Now, what was the connection between the United States Air Force, the American military, and the British? Were the British brought in, the British military, at any time? That would only seem to be right, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we kept them in the dark on most stuff. They had a, yeah, well, no, I mean, it's a U.S. base. They had a squadron leader that was more of a figurehead, I guess, for the base. But as far as the British involvement, they were like day late and dollar short. They came in like 2 weeks later. They came in after the team from Langley came in. So they were pretty much the Ministry of Defense slept. They slept during get this, we know for sure that the airspace was encroached upon at least 4 times coming in and leaving. And the RAF and the MOD did absolutely nothing. They didn't do nothing. They didn't even respond. That was up to us Americans. I mean, so if they have I think that's part of the issue that the MOD have. They keep trying to save face from that idiotic decision back then, of not being informed and not reacting for the initial aircraft encroachment. So they have a lot to explain.
That kind of struck me as odd, Jim, to say the least.
We did our fast 101 on classification plans of material. We have plans that are secret, which means that some of them can be leaked and it's okay because that's the intent of them. Okay. And then we might have a secret agreement with the UK, meaning UK eyes only. Besides us, it'd be UK's the only one we're sharing it within NATO. We might have one with the Germans like that, and that means the other participants don't know what's in it. But then when we have U.S. top secret, nobody knows in NATO what the hell's in it. It's our plan. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that is routine. Okay, that is how it works. That's part of the apparatus. Whatever. And that's the way it works. I wanted to. Did I answer that question?
Yeah.
In enough detail. One of the things I wanted to bring up, and we found out the scope, and this is after we published the book. We have had a response worldwide from former United States Air Force and military. At the time of the incident was going on, we've had all kinds of responses. One of the most notable, and we did verify this, we had to verify because it confirms so much peripherally as far as the evidence. I mean, we've actually had people say it was some kind of experiment going on. And so, well, you don't play around with nuclear weapons. Come on. Anyway, I get a contact, and I have met this guy face to face now, from a retired USAF sergeant, Mark Cartier, who's retired Air Force now. He was stationed at Helicon Air Base in Athens, Greece in 1980, at the time of the incident, exact time of the incident. And he remembered how a UFO incident close to Bentwaters Woodbridge, USAF bases in Suffolk, England, on the early hours of December 26, 1980. It required that all European bloc bases, ours, were to go in alert status, moving from a DEFCON 4, which is normal operations pretty much then, to DEFCON 2. That's just one step away from DEFCON 1, which meant war.
Damn, I was going to say.
Okay, so this down-channel alert message, which has to come from Air Staff, the Pentagon, to his, at that time, that base he was at was a common nodal point. It was a focal point for telecommunications, that went down channel to the other bases. The alert, he said, though, only lasted a couple hours. That was the time we were out in the field till we terminated it. And so that is the confirmation of the up-channel report of the Helping Hand security situation. And that it wasn't some type of experiment, okay? So that means we had people from the United States involved, we had people from Europe involved, we had people from Greece now involved, and all this is happening simultaneously. It's a very important case point, and we are going to go ahead and put it into the second edition of the book in our notes section because it tells so much. And Mark Cartier has a stellar career, top secret clearance, all kinds of stuff. He's an exceptional person. So not like the other people that we were talking about earlier that were substandard. Okay.
Okay. Now, this question is going to come out of left field. Okay, and it's one that I've been thinking about since I've been going through the book, your book. do you know who Larry Fawcett was, or Barry Greenwood?
Yeah, so I've heard of them.
Okay. Well, they wrote a book back in the 1980s that was taken strictly from military encounters with UFOs over Air Force bases, interceptor chases, all kinds of things. And their book, actually, even all these years later, almost 35, 40 years old, is a must read. But one of the cases that they talked about was a UFO incursion over Malmstrom Air Force Base that apparently interfered with ICBM missiles that were there in order to launch in the event that war would break out. Now, you were there at Malmstrom, Jim, in 1977, correct?
Yeah, I sure was.
Did you ever hear from any of your comrades there, any of the people at the base, about a UFO incursion?
Never.
It was never mentioned.
No, I think it sounds like this sounds really familiar to a problem we had with our intercontinental ICBMs. We had a problem with them that was from probably 60s on, where they would, and this used to be top secret. It's now declassified, by the way, and because it's fixed, obviously. But the missiles in North Dakota, South Dakota, Malmstrom, Montana, Wyoming, they would go to a no-go status just out of nowhere. Okay, you'd have 10 missiles go no-go status, which means you can't launch them. Okay, and they couldn't figure it out, but there's some type of inherent hardware problem that they couldn't figure out what it was. Of course, it was top secret at the time. And recently, I say in the last 6 years, they come out and they said, well, it was an inherent problem with the ICBMs at the time, because you'll hear cases of missiles that happening to missiles in North Dakota, and you hear about it in Wyoming, you hear about it in Montana, and those no-go statuses, that's what it is. The one that I know about that I've read about, and I actually confronted the person about it, is a lot of times the people there would see, and I've seen this even at Malmstrom, would confuse the northern lights with the first thing out of their mouth would be UFOs or something like that. It's northern lights. So I discount it highly, and I think that the problem with the missiles going to a no-go status was actually part of that problem that was inherited from 1960s on, and it's now fixed. So that's where I take that. I know I'm not unless you can show me, prove it otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there were actually some aircraft unidentified aircraft that did in fact make incursions on a number of those missile bases. There were former airmen that were on the security staff, the security patrol, that did end up going public. Now, what those things were, nobody knows, but apparently on at least 2 occasions, they in fact did interfere with the launch cycle. Now, that may just slide right into what you're talking about, but there would seem to be some kind of a connection there.
Well, I'm talking about real-world dull sword situation, a nuclear deficiency. And I don't know about those cases. I haven't talked to the witnesses. I don't know. I don't know about that, really.
Okay, that's fine.
I really don't. I don't know. That's actually Yeah, you see a lot of strange things at night.
Yeah.
That you can't explain. I mean, even I had one, earlier this summer, with a string of those lights. I said, what the hell is that? I seen a string of satellites, and it turns out I look it up, and it's Elon Musk. He deployed all these satellites.
Well, I'll tell you something that happened to me. This was roughly, this would have to be about 25, 26 years ago, when we were undergoing the spectacular heavenly phenomena of comet, I think it was Kahutek.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And my radio show at that time was every Saturday night. My wife and I would drive down to the radio station. We're living now still where we were then. And we would get home somewhere between 11:15, 11:30. Now, on this particular Saturday night, the comet was up there. And I told my wife, I said, honey, I'm gonna sit out here on the back of I had a pickup truck then. And I just want to look at the comet with my binoculars. Mm-hmm. And she said, okay. So she went in the house. And I'm out there in the driveway, and I'm just looking at the sky. And I live in Southern California, Jim, and I'm in a pretty fairly remote area, and it's beautiful. No excessive, street lights, nothing like that to interfere with the sky. And I'm looking at the comet. I mean, after a while, like 5-10 minutes, you get pretty bored looking at this easy snowball up there, Yeah. So I just started looking around the sky, and I looked to the south, and off to the south is Burbank. Okay. Now we also live on a flight path where commercial Airbuses will fly over. Mm-hmm. But this was at night, nothing was flying. And all of a sudden, through my binoculars, and I got a pretty good set of binoculars, they're 9x45 millimeter, I see this pinpoint of light that is moving like the hounds of hell are chasing it, right? And I'm watching this thing, and it's from the one side of the horizon, and I'm watching it for a couple of seconds, and I drop the binoculars away to see if I can see it with my naked eyes. I cannot. So I get the binoculars back up, and I reacquire this thing, and now it has already moved a hell of a distance, and I just followed it from one end of the horizon to the other, maybe 10 or 12 seconds, and the thing is gone. Now, whatever that was, and I, to this day, and I know I've talked about this before, to this day, I still cannot believe what I witnessed that night.
That's a genuine UFO. Then you can't explain it. I mean, you're familiar with the flight paths and all that stuff. I mean, hey, stuff like that does happen. I tell you what, when I did the Citizens, wasn't that? No, I did National Press Club one year in 2007, and I got to be with like 14 other people from around the world on different UFO cases and stuff like that. And the most fascinating, well, there was a lot of fascinating ones out of the 14, but the one that was just eye-dropping, and he did have nose camera footage of that, was the Iranian UFO with General Safari.
Oh, Tehran in 75?
Yeah. And that was like, and when you see nose cam footage, which he never shown, that's enough to say, well, that's the end of that story. There's just, what is that? What is that flying around, aircraft? What is that?
Well, I'll tell you a funny little story about that. The Shah of Iran fell in, what was it, 78, 79, right?
Yeah.
And the Ayatollah Assahola took over. Now, a lot of those military guys got the hell out of Dodge because they knew what was coming. Well, as it turns out, I started going to my barber up here where I live in the San Fernando Valley in 92. And it's a woman. And she was very good. Obviously, she was not from the United States. So after I get to know her a little bit, and I asked her, I said, where are you from? And she had indicated, because it was, I think, around Christmas, that she was getting ready for the holidays. So she was not of the Islamic faith. Mm-hmm. That became very apparent. But her husband... Okay, she would occasionally mention him. All she would say is he's retired. Then one day, we got to know each other pretty well. She told me, well, he was in the Air Force, in the Iranian Air Force. Mm-hmm. Well, when I heard that, and I'm doing my shtick with the magazine and the radio. I was doing a lot of television appearances then. I said, great, boy, I want to talk to your husband. And I told her about this case, the Tehran, Iran, UFO incident. I said, ask your husband if he would talk to me. Well, by God, he wouldn't. He never did. Then he died, okay, right. Which was, I thought, a hell of a bummer. But, boy, that would have been interesting. If he had an insight.
General Jafari, I spent a lot of time with him on Washington. We were out there a week and a half or something filming, and I spent
25 seconds, Jim.
Oh no, it's legit.
We're going to be running out of time.
Okay, but his family, by the way, he is deceased, but his family does live in Southern California now.
Okay, well, my friend, this is unfortunately. It's the second hour is now history. Jim, this has been really, truly a pleasure. And I want to take this opportunity before they cut me off to invite you to come back and we can do this again.
I will definitely do that, Don. This is a really good conversation. I appreciate it.
No problem. Okay, that's it tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back next Friday with another edition of Dark Matters Radio. In the meantime, keep your eyes pointed up, keep your ear to the ground, and God willing, the river don't rise. We'll see you then. Good night.